Fly Corp tips and tricks. So I'm going to go through some tips and tricks that you can use when playing the video game Fly Corp. And I'm specifically talking about the free play mode where you have this giant map. So one of the tips that I have is to try to make a route through the north heading towards China and try to make a route through the south heading towards China, and then make something that kind of goes through the middle. So for mine, all of the routes go to Moscow, and then they go to Antana, and then they head towards Beijing. And on the southern route, they go to, it's called Thimphu, and from Thimphu they go to all the major cities like Shanghai, Beijing, Taipei, etc. And what happens is, because they're direct routes to the good cities, all the traffic will try to fly through these cities. And it will get the traffic where it needs to go faster. So another tip is, if you want to save money, you have to chain your hubs together. For example, East London is connected to Durban, which is then connected to Maputo, which is a chain. It saves money, which is important when you're starting out. However, it can reduce speed because the airplane has to land, and then there's a little bit of a delay before it takes off again. And for the other plane to fly back, pick up the passengers, and deliver them is longer than if I had a direct flight. So a direct flight can definitely be better. Another thing that I do is I check for red airplanes. You don't have to upgrade all of them, but sometimes it makes sense. For example, this one probably makes sense to upgrade it. And if you want to save money, you're going to wait until it gets to the hub and flies back round trip and see if it turns red again. And if it does, upgrade it again. So that's going to save you money. If you upgrade it all the way, you can do that. It's going to cost you money to do that for all your planes. They will travel faster. And if they travel faster, it's going to deliver passengers faster. I've got 294 passengers waiting here, and this plane only carries 100 people. That's 3 trips that it needs to make to carry those people. So I could do an upgrade, and it's going to carry all of them in one trip. So another example is, I could connect this to here. Now keep in mind, it's not in that country. It's in South Africa, which is Cape Town. The nearest hub is over here. However, because it's at the south of the map, chances are the flights are going to be heading north, so you probably want to connect it to this hub over here. It does get expensive. That was $14,000 to make that connection. So there is a problem with making a chain of hubs, which I will explain. If you look over here at Australia, it was a lot cheaper to chain some of these hubs together. I don't know if they are chained, but you see that from Canberra to Brisbane, and then from Brisbane to Rockhampton, and then to Mackay. They're chained together. And the problem is, if someone wants to get from Canberra to Mackay, it's not going to get there. The reason why is because he's got too many hops he's got to go through. What's going to happen is, the aircraft, they're going to take the traffic to Brisbane, which branches out to Bundaberg and Toowoomba, and then they're going to take the traffic to Rockhampton, and they're going to carry traffic to Townsville. So Mackay has to compete with a lot of other cities for its traffic to be delivered. And what's going to happen is, those passengers are going to be waiting over here while the cities that are closer are going to be delivered. and you'll have to upgrade your plane in order to move all those passengers up the chain. They probably will arrive, but it's going to take a little bit longer, which means you're going to earn your cash less quickly. So I'm going to take a look at what does it take to do a direct route from here to here. 38,000. That means you have to fly 38,000 people in order to break even. That's a lot of people. And we don't have stats per city, but it's unlikely it's going to make that money. So what happens is at the later stages of the game, the cities become less and less profitable. In the early stages of the game, it only costs 100 to open a route. You only have to fly 100 passengers. Maybe in a minute, you'll make your money back. But in the later stages of the game, as you're adding routes, you're not going to make that money back for the small cities. Maybe not even for the big cities. So that's one of the design flaws with the game. Excuse me. So the other thing that I do is I use these islands, such as Sicily and Cyprus, Sardinia. I use them to connect, for example, Tunis through Palermo. I could connect it to Naples and Catanzaro and Lecce and Bari and Foggia and Cagliari, and I could connect all those cities. I don't know how to pronounce any of these, to Annaba, Sousse, etc. So I use these little islands like Palma to make lots of connections as a web. There is a design where you have a centralized hub connecting to all of the outlying towns, but you see that I did it with Toulouse also. It's not connected directly to Paris, but it has connections spidering out. We'll see it elsewhere on the map where it's less congested. Here's an example where I have a capital city that branches out, and I have one over here. But if we go look at someplace like the United States, there's one capital city, which is over here. Doesn't make sense to draw lines out to all these cities because the routes are so expensive, they're not going to make money. And it would take so long for a flight to come from Fresno out to Washington, D.C., and then have to go back to Vancouver or something like that. So you can't use that same design. So what I did was I made little centralized hubs such as Edmonton. And here's another one for Winnipeg. And Minneapolis is another one. And they branch out to different areas, which saves money. And you could argue it saves time too, because if you did Washington, D.C. out to Edmonton direct, for example, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the shortcut through Minneapolis. Well, my game crashed. So those are some tips and tricks for using Fly Corp. Unfortunately, my computer doesn't have the resources to run once I've unlocked most of the map. But with a smaller map, it runs fine. I'd say once I got around halfway is when it started to slow down. And I'm playing on a laptop. If you have any questions or comments, please post below. Don't forget to go to cheapbooks.cc and look for FlyCorp in my discussion forum under Airline Management Sim. I have other tips and tricks and guides and instructions on how to play the game. And I own cheapbooks.com, which is a website that has listings for books and textbooks. Thank you.